Chapter 3. Morning arrived quietly. Light found the timber beams first, tracing the grain where decades of hands had worn it smooth. The glass panels along the eastern wall opened themselves with the faintest whisper of motion. Cool air drifted in, carrying soil and the sweetness of flowering grass. Lysara stood barefoot near the threshold, a cup warming her hands. Steam rose slowly, curling toward the ceiling. She watched it longer than she meant to. The lodge held itself with quiet certainty. Timber and stone carried the weight easily. Old craftsmanship met modern materials without rivalry. No banners, no sigils carved deep. Nothing that insisted on being remembered. Technology lived between things, adjusting temperature by fractions, responding to light and weather and the rhythms of its inhabitants. It never demanded attention. This was not a house designed to impress. It was designed to endure people. Lysara moved through familiar space by memory alone. Her fingers brushed the long table's edge as she passed, not for balance, just to feel it there. The shallow bowl held river stones the children had collected over years, each one remembered for reasons mostly forgotten now. Beyond the open panels, gardens sloped away. Low stone walls traced their curves, more suggestion than boundary. Morning dew turned each leaf into a lens. Beyond the gardens, out into the plain, stood the great tree. Thick trunk, scarred bark. Branches heavy with leaves that caught light and softened it. Lysara had known it longer than she'd known most people. It had been old when she was young. She never stopped to look at it. Home didn't require acknowledgement. She paused near one of the interior doorways, cup still in hand. A slight pause. Nothing anyone else would notice. Her shoulder leaned briefly into the frame. Her fingers tightened around ceramic, then loosened. Not pain. Weight. The quiet kind that settled rather than struck. Days stacked carefully without ever being set down. She breathed out, slow and even. Air moved. Light shifted. Somewhere deep within the structure, something adjusted imperceptibly. Temperature, airflow, the subtle redistribution of environmental load. This was not where a ruler withdrew from the world. There were places for that. Rooms of deliberation, halls where words carried weight and faces held masks. This house had none of those things. No elevated platforms. No vantage points designed for command. This was where meals were cooked and sometimes burned. Where arguments ended in laughter or silence. Where children learned the shape of themselves by moving through familiar spaces and finding no resistance. Footsteps on the upper level. A laugh that skidded into a near shout. Another voice answered, lower, indignant, then laughing. Something thumped. A sharp shh followed, entirely ignored. Lysara smiled despite herself. She straightened. The weight eased as if reminded it didn't belong entirely to her. The cup was set aside. The noise spread through the space, softening as it traveled, becoming part of the morning. Light shifted brighter, catching in hair and motion. Lysara opened her mouth to speak, then stopped, content to let the moment exist a second longer. Artur came in at speed. "Careful," she said, already smiling, half habit, half greeting. Bare feet thudded against the floor. He crossed the room at momentum, straight into her legs, arms wrapping without warning. Cheek pressed briefly into her side. Then he pulled back just as quickly. "Hi," he said, already turning. "Good morning to you too." Lysara caught the back of his tunic before he could vanish. She drew him in slower this time, planting a kiss on the top of his head. He tolerated it. Barely. He slipped free and dropped to the floor where his toys waited. Articulated figures, a wheeled crawler with one missing panel, foam blocks that had been something else before imagination got hold of them. He sat cross-legged and pushed the crawler forward, humming as it bumped into a block and tipped over. Lysara watched him a moment longer than necessary. Vina entered with more restraint. She moved to the counter, hair still damp. posture halfway between composed and theatrical. She reached for a slim drink wafer, slid it into the dispenser, waited as the surface shimmered and formed a clear vessel around it. "What did you pick?" Lysara asked. Vina glanced over. "Citrus stim, low fizz." "Before lessons?" Vina shrugged. "Everyone does it." "You're not everyone." Vina rolled her eyes, but not fully. She took the drink and leaned back against the counter, watching light catch in it. "It's fine. We've got spatial modeling first, then ethics." Again. "Still ethics?" "They keep changing the scenarios. Today it's resettlement rights. Like if a group relocates but keeps access to shared infrastructure." Arthur made an explosion sound and knocked over both blocks. "That sounds thrilling," Lysara said. "It's boring, but also stupid. Half the answers depend on what council you're pretending to be on." "That's usually the point." Vina frowned slightly, took a sip. "You're on council today, right?" "Yes." Vina nodded, satisfied. She shifted her weight. "I've got evaluation later. Don't forget." "I won't." Arthur looked up. "You forgot last time." Lysara opened her mouth, then paused. She rubbed her temple. "I was late, not absent." "That's still late," Vina added. "Fair." Lysara spread her hands in surrender. "I'll be there on time." That settled it. Arisha entered quietly, as she always did. Presence arriving before sound. She'd been with Lysara's family for 10 years. Nursemaid when Lysara's children were small, housemaid when they weren't. The kind of constant presence that lived in the residence and noticed everything without needing to be told. She carried a folded cloth and paused just long enough to take in the room. Arthur on the floor, Vina hovering, Lysara leaning slightly more than usual against the counter. "Shoes," Arisha said calmly, nodding toward the doorway. Vina glanced down. "I was going to, and still are." Vina huffed, but moved. Arthur ignored them, pushing his crawler toward Lysara's feet, making a soft, mechanical noise. Arisha crouched beside him. "That one's still missing its panel." "I know. It's battle damage." Arisha nodded solemnly. "Of course." She rose and moved to Lysara's side, setting a cup down silently. Their eyes met for a second, just long enough to acknowledge the shared morning arithmetic of tiredness and routine. Light shifted higher. Wind moved through tall grass beyond the glass. A soft chime sounded. Lysara straightened. "That's me." Vina took another sip. "Don't be late." "I won't." Arthur looked up. "Can I stay here with Arisha after lessons?" "We'll see. Ask again later." He nodded, already distracted. The notification arrived as expected. Lysara moved to the study alcove and accepted the connection. The interface shimmered into focus, visual this time. Kalis Varn appeared, already scanning something off-screen. "Morning," he said. "Have you seen the latest Outer Reach transit reports?" Ellen forwarded them last night. Lysara pulled the data overlay into view. The volume drop is steeper than projected. Steeper and consistent. 3rd month running. Kalis gestured at his own display. "We're down 18% on the northern freight corridor. That's not seasonal variation." Lysara studied the shipping lanes traced in faint lines across the interface. Density clusters that should have been brighter weren't. "Do we know where the traffic's going?" "Not definitively, but there's been increased activity through the Galvian secondary routes. Nothing dramatic, but enough to notice." Enough to notice. Kalis's way of saying something didn't sit right. "What's the economic impact?" she asked. "Transit fees are down, obviously. Ellen's estimating a 7% reduction in annual revenue if it continues. Not catastrophic, but we're bleeding." 7%. Not enough to trigger alarm bells, just enough to be uncomfortable. "Could it be infrastructure issues on our end?" Lysara asked. Maintenance delays? Processing backlogs? Already checked. Transit times through Rethulian space are actually faster this quarter. Whatever's pulling traffic away, it's not our efficiency. Lysara felt something settle at the back of her mind. Not concern yet, just attention. Someone's offering better terms. Or different terms. Kalis leaned back. Joran's been tracking diplomatic chatter. There's been an uptick in regional cooperation proposals from second-tier systems. Trade partnerships, mutual development frameworks, all very benign. But they're being floated by systems that historically didn't coordinate with each other. And the language is almost identical across 3 separate proposals. Lysara frowned. Who's drafting them? That's the question. Kalis set his stylus down. Could be coincidence. Could be a third party providing templates. Could be nothing. Could be. Behind her, Artor made a mechanical humming sound. The crawler bumped across the floor. Kalis glanced past her shoulder. Is he still trying to fix that thing? He's not trying to fix it. It's battle damage. Of course it is. Kalis's expression shifted back to professional. I'm flagging this for council today. Not as a crisis, just something to keep an eye on. Trade pattern shifts, diplomatic coordination we can't source. Small things. Small things that add up, Lysara said quietly. Maybe. He picked up his stylus again. Or maybe it's just the usual regional churn, and we're seeing patterns that aren't there. Either way, I'd rather flag it early. Agreed. She glanced at the data again. The numbers weren't alarming on their own, just off. What else is on the agenda? Agricultural subsidy review, infrastructure maintenance priorities, the usual. He paused. Should be a short session unless someone decides to relitigate the water rights framework again. Let's hope not. Kalis smiled faintly. Council convenes at 10. Don't be late. I won't. The interface faded. Lysara sat still for a moment. The data overlay was gone, but the numbers remained in her mind. 18%. 7%. Small things. Small things that didn't add up yet. She rose and stepped out of the study alcove, moving through the main hall toward the western gallery. The entire wall had been drawn back, glass panels folded into themselves, opening the house completely to the gardens beyond. Cool air drifted through. Morning light spilled across stone flooring. Lysara paused at the threshold where interior became exterior without boundary. The garden sloped away gently, low stone walls tracing their curves. Beyond the last flowering shrubs, the plains stretched wide and unbroken, gold and green meeting the horizon cleanly. In the distance, mountains rose in a steady line, broad-backed and ancient. The great tree stood in the middle distance, thick trunk, scarred bark, branches heavy with leaves that caught light and softened it. She looked at it for a long moment, then turned back inside.